shift our knowledge about it. And it's my privilege to introduce you to Dr. Lerato Motsoaledi, Mr. John Lockie, and Mr. Nantla Mabizela. Now, I have very impressive biographical summaries of them, but I was wondering, in the interest of time, whether it might be useful to just ask our three panelists to say a very brief something about themselves, knowing that when we ask our first question, they may well tell us more about themselves. How would that be if our three panelists just say something about themselves? And Lerato, since I mentioned your name first, and you're the prettiest of the three, maybe you just want to say something about yourself, and then, if I may, I'll go over to John, and then by then Nantla may have joined properly, and then he can just say something about himself.
Thank you, Inette, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. My name, as has been mentioned, is Lerato Motsoaledi. I'm a clinical psychologist. I also have a PhD in consulting psychology, so I work in clinical spaces, and I also work in organizational spaces as a diversity management specialist. I also do executive coaching. I'm currently based at the Department of Social Development in South Africa, where our mandate is to accommodate children who are regarded as in need of care and protection according to the Children's Act. I also am an ancestral child. My healing journey, my initiation journey has not been completed yet, but I do work with ancestors. And I look forward to spending time with everyone. Thank you.
Lerato, thank you very, very much. John. Just a few words, John, about yourself, knowing that we'll explore a little more later.
Okay, I've just got a load shedding at the moment, so that's why my connection is up and down. So I've just switched to my phone. Can you all hear me okay?
Thank you,
okay,
yes.
Great. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this wonderful event. My name is John Lockley, and I'm a traditional healer from the Eastern Cape, and my Xhosa name is Ucingowindaba, which means a messenger, and I started my journey in 1998, and I've been a Sangoma for over 25 years now, and so I've spent a lot of time traveling around the world educating people about what Sangomas are in terms of being traditional healers and shamans from Africa. And I've encountered a lot of prejudice about Sangomas. So I've tried to educate people about who Sangomas are and the beauty of traditional African healers and the way we heal and work with people. So a big part of my work is wilderness, helping people to engage with the wilderness, and as they engage with the wilderness, to also engage with themselves, with their ancestors and where they come from. And another part of my work is working with dreams. So I have a private practice, and I work with people, helping them connect to their dreams, the wilderness, and also with their ancestors. So I wrote a book called Leopard Warrior, which is published overseas, but also in South Africa. And it speaks about my journey in the Eastern Cape, becoming a Sangoma. And it also speaks about how people can connect to their ancestors and the importance of connecting to ancestors. And it's not just a nice term, but it's about connecting to our humanity and connecting to our blood and bones. So I speak about the journey of Ubuntu, which is the journey for all of us, regardless of what color skin you are and what culture you're from or what religion you are from. But Ubuntu is about humanity. It's about connecting to who we are as human beings. And that is where the whole world of ancestors comes in, and the whole realm of nature. So I don't want to talk much longer than that, but I think that kind of sums it up in a short space.
John, thank you so much. Now, our third panelist, Nantla, I hope I pronounce your name correctly. You are amongst us. Might you want to put your video on and say something about yourself?
Thank you, Annette. And good evening to everyone who is in the space. And yes, my name is Nhlanhla Mabizela. I think, like what is in my bio sort of sums it up, but I would like to be identified as a human rights activist. And I've been a human rights activist for a while now. And my work, that I've been doing all along, most of the time, it's around issues that surround gender and being a gender activist to a certain extent as well. I identify myself as being a feminist who really pushes for issues of gender equality. And I'm currently working for an international organization that is representing worker rights issues. And we deal a lot with violation in our workplaces and making sure that the voices of masses of people who are some disenfranchised, but make sure that we uplift the voice of workers in the region. And when I talk about region, I talk about Africa-wide. So that's the work that I'm involved in at the current moment. And I'm based in Lesotho. So I'm South African, but I work out of an office in Lesotho. And in terms of my journey as a Sangoma or a traditional healer, I think for a better description, it's something that started a long time ago. I think it started when I was born, and it's an interesting journey in itself, but in terms of how it unfolded over the years, I got initiated in a place called Nkandla in KZN. And yeah, so since then, I think around 2010, 2009, that's where I was initiated as a Sangoma. But in terms of the journey itself, it started right when I was born, and it manifests itself then in many ways, in different ways. But my initiation really happened in 2009, 2010, something like that. Yeah, I think a lot of things will be revealed as and when we talk, and that's who I am. And thank you for inviting me into this space. Ngiyabonga.
Nantla, thank you very much. And you've now helped, because you've almost helped us to move into the first question. So just for everybody here, we'll be asking our panelists 3 questions which they will answer for us. After that, we will open the floor, and by then, I'm sure all of you would have questions or comments or reflections that might be directed to any one of the panelists or just to the floor. And this is going to be very exciting. So the first question is about your journey to become a Sangoma. We phrased the question, what does a journey look like to become a Sangoma? But as I thought about it, and Nantla, as I heard you, I also realized your journeys might in fact be very different. So with your permission, if I may start with you, John.
Yes, well, thanks very much. Well, my journey to become a Sangoma started before I was born, actually. It started with my mother, who's actually Irish from Dublin. And the Irish Celtic way is very similar to the traditional Xhosa and Zulu way, but unfortunately, due to colonization and religion, they lost that lineage, that old lineage. So my grandmother comes from this very old tradition of seer. She's a seer, and she had dreams about what was going to happen to South Africa in the future. And one day my mother was walking along the seafront in Dunleary in Ireland, and she had this vision of African elephants. And then she realized that she needed to go to Africa and see the wild elephants while they were still wild. So then she got a transfer from her job in London, and she went to Zambia, and that's when she met my father. And she encouraged my father to go into the bush to look at elephants, and then they fell in love. And then I was born in Cape Town, and I was born in Cape Town with the mark of a Xhosa Sangoma, with the white birth skin over my eyes. And my mother forgot my birth until she met my teacher, Mam Gwevu. And when my mum met my teacher, Mam Gwevu, we went up to Johannesburg to see my family from the Eastern Cape. And as soon as my teacher, Mam Gwevu, went through the gates, she had white clay around her eyes and lots of beads. And in that moment, my mother remembered my birth. So she got very excited. And then when we sat down and we had tea together, my mother said, Mam Gwevu, I wanted to share something about John's birth. When he was born, he looked just like you. And she said, what do you mean? She said, well, when John was born, he had this white clay around his eyes. And as he came out, I looked at the doctors and I said, he looks like a little abo, because my mother had just come from Australia. And she said, I look like a little Aborigine with a white clay around my eyes. And in that moment, the white doctors looked at her shocked, because it was apartheid. It was 1971. And the black nurses, the Xhosa nurses, ululated. They would, le. And so my Xhosa teacher, Mam Gwevu, said, yes, that's correct. John was born to become a Sangoma. And when I was born, I was also born with a white clay around my eyes. So I wasn't able to find a teacher, a teacher, because of apartheid. So I got extremely sick and I came close to death. And my story was very dramatic, and I don't want to talk about it too much because it's very long, and that's why I wrote a book called Leopard Warrior. But needless to say, I found my teacher, and after 7 years of suffering from the Twaza illness and coming close to death a few times, and then when I met my teacher, she spoke about all my near-death experiences and my mental illness and problems that I'd had. And then she said to me, what took you so long to come to me, to meet me, to find me? And I said to her, apartheid. And she said, Tiklo Nkosi yam. She said, we almost lost you. And then she looked at me and she said to me, do you want to become my apprentice, my umkweta? Do you want to become my apprentice? And I said, she said, do you want to become a Sangoma? And I said, well, what does it mean to become a Sangoma? I knew nothing about it. I just heard the word witch doctor and negative speech about Sangomas. And I didn't believe any of it, to be honest, because I felt in those days there was a lot more mysticism and magic that we weren't told, and the literature that I read at university alluded to a lot of magic and mysticism, but also a lot of misinformation about Sangomas. So I said to her, what is a Sangoma? What does it mean to become a Sangoma? So she said, to become a Sangoma means you're going to stop being sick. And she said it means that the ancestors are going to be able to move through you in different ways, and you're going to be able to heal people. And it also means that you're going to get a lot stronger. And one day you're going to become a great trance dancer. And I looked at her, and at that stage, I was walking with great difficulty because I had a lot of problems with my legs. But the fact is that she had accurately spoken about the last 7 years of my life in detail with, like I say, an incredible amount of accuracy. And I just met her. And then she also said to me, you know, the night before you came, last night, I dreamt that the Great Spirit came to me in a dream, Utikro, and said that I needed to prepare myself to train someone to become a senior Sangoma like me, and that I needed to be ready because this person was going to come from a different culture. And she said, when I saw you, I knew you were the one. So I listened to all of this and I said to her, okay, I'll agree to become your apprentice. So she said, wonderful. Well, come tomorrow and I'll give you your first white beads, which will be a sign that you, my apprentice. So I went the next day, and then she invited me to a trance dance that weekend. So I went to my first trance dance, and then I had incredible experience in trance dance, the Nhlombe, as we say in Xhosa, the Nhlombe, the umsebenzi. So I went and with my girlfriend at the time, and I think that was around 1997 or so, 1998. And I was sitting down and the rhythms were going and there was a lot of dancing, there's a lot of singing, and I thought, wow, this is like such an incredible show. It was like the most incredible drumming and dancing show I've seen in my life. And then everything stopped, and then they came to me and my girlfriend, and I was so shy. I was trying to hide and I couldn't. I was so shy. And they said, you're wearing the beads of Amagqirha. And they said, you are the trainee of Mamgwevu, that you're not allowed to sit down. You must stand up and you must dance. And I felt so shy. I could have just hidden somewhere, you know. So I had one mama took me on the left arm, one mama took me on the right arm, and they lifted me up into the center of the room. So now I'm shy, I'm trying to hide away, and now I'm in the center of the room. And then the one mama said, Beti gubo, masihambe, beta. Masihambe, sifuna amadlozi kuhamba phambile, masihambe. She said, now we want the drums to go and we want to raise the energies up. So then the drums started. And then she pointed to another guy at the other end of the room. She said, Beti sigubo, beat the drum. So we had two drums going like stereophonics, you know. And then I started dancing and I was very shy. I was so shy. And then suddenly one of the mamas looked at me and they shouted and they went, Kwenza! They said, dance, dance. And the both of them were dancing. And I felt the bosoms of the ladies going into me at the top. And I felt their hips banging into me. And I was this skinny little white kid. And I could feel the rhythms from their breasts going into me here. And then I could feel the rhythms going into my waist because they were holding me so tightly. And in that moment, I realized I could either dance or I must go home. And in that moment, I followed the exuberance and I just let go and I just went, ah! And I just started dancing. And in that moment, all this energy came through me, all my pain, all my grief. And I just felt this electricity going up the backs of my legs and I just danced. I danced like I felt freedom. Ah! So I always talk about that moment and where I felt freedom. And I felt electricity and I felt the beauty of Africa going through me, but not with words, but with energy, this incredible energy, like a lightning storm in Johannesburg when you're stuck in traffic and you feel this energy. I felt it being transmitted into me. And then I apprenticed with my teacher, Mamgwevu, for 10 years. Yeah, for 10 years. Every year I'd go and spend 3 months with her and her family, and I would train and I would dream and I'd work with plants and I'd do divination and I'd work with the community. And so at least 3 months every year I'd be with her. And I had many experiences and many teachings. And this is what propelled me onto the road of being a traditional healer. And I always say to people, I don't have a choice because the spirits speak to me, the ancestors speak to me. There's no other job for me because my calling is so strong. So I have many experience around this, and I feel I've been chosen as an advocate for Sangomas in some ways because my name that my teacher dreamt for me is Uqingulwindaba, which means the messenger and the one who bridges cultures and bridges the distances. And then when I went overseas to work and lead workshops, I found incredible misinformation and ignorance about Sangomas and who we are. And then I found my job is to actually say, this is who we are. And everything that you've been taught is wrong. This is who Sangomas are. And some of the best and most beautiful Sangomas are in dire poverty right now. And a lot of my work and focus is to make sure my elders are okay. And they've been left aside by the mainstream Western culture, whether it's South African or overseas. And the reason is because they have been demonized for 300 years because of colonization. And I said it had to stop right now. And so a lot of my work is giving talks about sangomas and then showing people with my rhythms, my drumming, this energy that's being transmitted to me, and that this energy is real, and that we are extremely lucky in South Africa because we have gold in our culture, and that gold is the Sangoma culture, which is this ancient wisdom of indigenous medicine that's largely untapped. And it is very, very sacred and very powerful. And I believe that this medicine can help heal the world. I believe this Ubuntu medicine that is connecting us to nature and ourselves and our ancestors can help heal this damaged and broken and vulnerable world right now.
Sure, John. I wonder how many of us feel what I felt, a kind of a cold vibration. Whew. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure. That's my life, my
So
experience.
now we have Nantla and we have Lerato. Lerato, shall I ask Nantla first? And then you, or would you like to be first? Maybe I should see Nantla again and then you can be lost. Is that all right, Lerato?
That's okay, Inet.
Nantla, are you still in that car or have you now gone to a different realm?
Inet, I think if you don't mind, I think because of the connectivity, if I stay in, and maybe I'll show my face towards the end again, but because of, yeah. But thank you. I think, for me, the journey really started, in fact, I mean, in a similar way, like what John has been sharing. And maybe I'll link it also to my name, because my name was not just a name that just came. It was a name that came because of being protected by the ancestors. And maybe, I mean, in isiZulu, we'll say amatongo, and amatongo simply means, or amatongo simply means those who have passed and those who are sleeping, and they are with us all the time. And to an extent as well, I mean, it's an acknowledgement as well of saying that we are created. So when we talk about ancestry as well, we talk about izidalwa. And izidalwa means, simply translated, God's creatures, God's creation, and people who have been created. So that journey for me, it started with my mother and my father, my parents. My mom was 8 months pregnant with me, and they got involved in a horrible car accident. And when they tell the story, is that the car rolled a couple of times, and with my mom, being pregnant with me at the time. And the strange part of it is that the car didn't have any scratches. After even rolling, it didn't have any scratches. And the first person to be given attention was my mom. And the doctors, after doing some examinations, they said, "You've got a lucky child." And that's how my name came to be. Nhlanhla, it's lucky, so that's how my name came to be. And ever since then, I mean, all throughout, I've been this child who will see things, this child who will talk about things before even they happen, But because there wasn't any space to talk about some of those things and some of the things that I would say as a child, no one will pay attention to me. Up until, things happen, that's when somebody will say, you warned us about this, you warned us about that. And throughout, I mean, like as I was growing up, I got really sick, and I'll be taken to different doctors to see different people, and I wouldn't get better. It would be a period of time where my limbs would not be working, and I wouldn't be eating anything. But because of people didn't understand what was happening with me, what was happening with me. Fast forward, I know, I think it's a long story, but fast forward, I now, at work, and I'm going about my business at work, and there are a lot of things that are happening, and I'm constantly sick. I don't know, sometimes I wouldn't even recall what I went through in terms of the day, and there was this one day where I had I was staring through a window at work, and I didn't realize that I've been looking out that window, and it was wide open, aimlessly. It's as if like somebody, I was like frozen, and I think time froze for me at that particular moment. Up until a colleague of mine asked me, "Are you aware that you've been staring out of that window for almost 3 hours now?" And that's when I think things started like shifting for me. I called a mentor of mine who is a psychiatrist, and had conversations with her. And she said to me, you've got a choice, and that choice is it's either I sit with you and we go through the sessions, or you go at this moment to your grandmother's graveside and have a conversation with her, because what you have, it's beyond what I can do for you, but what you can do for yourself. And that's when then I started my journey, started like being initiated as a Sangoma. And I spent, I think, about 9 months. But even through that journey itself of like being initiated, being at the initiation school with my Gobela, and what she told me when I got to sit with her, she said to me, I'm not there to train. I'm there to share knowledge with her, because the people that I come with, or the people that have been protecting me for all of these years, and the people who gave me this power, are more powerful than hers. So it's going to be a journey of mutual exchanges. Yeah, I think the rest of it, it's really history. And what John was describing as well is things that I went through myself in terms of the drums, because the drums are the channel, the beating of the drums, and the screaming as well. That's where you feel all of these things that are happening to you that haven't happened in a very long time. The muscles that have been dysfunctional for years, they start functioning. The senses that have not been working well, you start like feeling them starting to work and function. And yeah, I think that's the long and short of my journey. But what was interesting in the whole thing in terms of my journey the kind of work that I got channeled into became what I was using my talent or the energy that has been channeled through me was to work with people in the way that I'm working with them now. Because in many spaces that I'm at or what I do, I'll find people who are lost, who some of them are confused about their own journeys in terms of being either spiritual healers, and I'm using this term spiritual healers in a general term, whether they're sangomas, whether they're prophets, and I'll have conversations with them. And some of them, it will be conversations about their own journey into this world, and their link to their past, so it would how the gift is manifesting itself over the years for me. I wouldn't be sitting and being somewhere in my shrine and consulting with people, but I consult with people as I walk and as I interact with them on a daily basis. So that would be, and I think we've been robbed a lot and we've been deprived. I grew up in a township, and that township is called Alexander. And one of the things that I really dear and consider to be very private is space, nature, and growing up in a township and being an initiate and being a Sangoma becomes a challenge because you pick up a lot of energies, and some of those energies are energies that are carrying a lot of pain, and the pain that was not caused by them, the pain that was caused by colonialism, because people have been deprived of who they are, what they are, where they are, in terms of their true identity. Part of it, I think what was fascinating about it is that we all have totems, and John, when I was talking about elephants, those are things that we lost connection with. And I listened to stories of old people talking about how they were not even allowed to leave the cities and go back home, because of, apartheid. They were confined in spaces that didn't allow them to go back and connect with their ancestors. And lately, what we're seeing a lot in terms of like living the whole journey or the whole trajectory, it's again, how the whole journey of being a Sangoma or a traditional healer is not quite accepted. But people use the modern churches in terms of like channeling that energy. And I think that's one of the things that I fight for and I push for, to say, as my identity being Unhlanhla Wakamabizela, it's really embodying some of that and being able and not being shy about being a traditional healer, in the modern spaces. I know that I've said a lot of things, and maybe some of them will raise a lot of questions. But in the long and short of it, that's my journey, of being a Sangoma. And that's why I started. Inet, you are muted.
Isn't it interesting? We can just flick a button, we're back. Thank you, Lerato. So you didn't hear me. Thank you, Nankla. Thank you so much for taking us with you there. I'm just seeing a car rolling. So, Lerato.
So my journey was quite different from what John and Nhlanhla said. In my case, I had no inkling whatsoever that I had any associations with ancestors. I was raised by a single professional mother who just wanted to focus on my well-being and my education. And sangomas were never mentioned. We did not offer libations, or we did not patla in Setswana. But then in the process of growing up in my adulthood, I became aware that I was plagued by a very stubborn form of anxiety, you know, feelings of discontent, displacement, just a general feeling of dis-ease, being out of place, but not being able to quite pinpoint it. But it was very enduring and very stubborn. It did not respond to any traditional psychotherapies. And that sort of propelled me into a journey of seeking alternative forms of healing. So I found myself getting acquainted to things like Reiki healing meditation, past life regression therapy, numerology, tarot cards, crystals, anything you mention it, angels, etc., etc., etc. All the while I was heavily immersed in my Christianity. And then what's interesting for me is that I never explored getting healing from African traditional healers. You know, it just was something that was not in my frame of reference. And one day my Reiki healer, who was a white female, I think French, but first generation South African born, actually asked me why I was so invested in Western healing when my soul was so African. And for me, that was a very cryptic message that I did not even quite understand. But I do remember that she referred me to a Sangoma. I found the suggestion quite crazy, to be honest. And I did nothing with the information. Fast forward a few years later, I'm training to become a hypnotherapist. And we are busy in the process of doing holotropic breath work, which can induce altered states of consciousness. And during the breath work, I suddenly become bombarded by images of sangomas on mountains with their traditional cloths, you know, with black and white and red colors and those animal motifs that Nhlanhla was speaking about. Additionally, I was smelling mpepho very strongly, the African incense. I was smelling it very strongly, and I was getting messages, you know, about my family. So clearly an ancestor was channeling messages to me, but I woke up from that state not curious enough to take this further. But, you know, a spirit will orchestrate things to happen in such a way that we meet the people that we are supposed to meet at the right divine timing. A few years later, I met the Sangoma that I was referred to by my Reiki healing at a training workshop, a healing modality type of workshop. It was family constellation. And again, I'm trying to heal this anxiety that has been plaguing me for so long. After the session, the Sangoma pulls me aside and says to me, okay, I have to tell you this. They say I must tell you this. Your anxiety is an ancestral affliction. It's not going to be cured by anything until you surrender to the call and accept and become initiated. My reaction to her was just rage, like, how dare you? Because, you know, she was talking about a world that was just so foreign to me, that I had been socialized to fear, to hold in suspicion, to denigrate. So that was a no for me. But then years later, again, in my healing journey, I found myself doing soul retrieval work. And again, during a healing session, I find myself in that deep state of relaxation. I find myself in a cave with Zulu healers beating drums furiously for me. And then I think that was really the catalyst that sort of opened some portal that helped, you know, the communication between myself and my ancestors. And that's when they really started coming to me and showing up. But it would really take at least 16 years between the revelation that I had work to do with ancestors and my accepting. And what brought me to that place was really finding myself in in a very difficult place where I felt like I was just surrounded by, you know, hard rocks and what is that phrase again? Being stuck between a hard rock and what? What did they say? A rock and what did they say? That place. I found
Rock
myself.
and hard place.
Yes. Yeah. So basically things came to a head and I got a very clear message that I was becoming redundant. And at that point, I think I reached a state of surrender and the communication happened. And then they were able to introduce themselves to me, guide me to my healer. And yeah, I'm still on the journey. It's been a long journey. I'm still on the journey. But I think for me, what's significant, particularly within the context of the topic that we are talking about honoring ancestors and reclaiming indigenous knowledge is the reality of how deeply entrenched colonization has been in my own psyche and invariably in the collective consciousness. Because like Nhlanhla was saying, there is stigma, there is a lot of denigration, you know, there is a split. You can tell that society is in that paranoid schizoid position and the badness has been projected, you know, to this journey. And so I'm very happy to hear John speaking about how he has been working hard to advocate for the journey and to give it its goodness. So yeah, if we are to decolonize, then it means the task ahead of us is quite massive. But thankfully, there's also such a strong awakening that's happening throughout our society. So something is definitely shifting for the better. And that's very heartwarming for me. So in a nutshell, that's my journey. I'm led mostly by church ancestors or people who are regarded as prophets. So there's a very strong association for me with that type of ancestor. And my ancestral name, the name that they have given me, which is interesting because the name was given to me while I was at home and my mother was sick. But I had a dream where my mother was calling out my name and the name was just reverberating throughout space. And she was saying, so at home they call me Pinky. So she was saying, Pinky, Pinky, Mabana, Mabana. Mabana means mother of the children. So my mission and the work that ancestors would like me to continue is to help children. So maybe it's not surprising that I work with children currently for the Department of Social Development. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell from me.
Thank you, Lerato, Nhlanhla, and John. John did say that he might slip off because of load shedding. John's back. What we're going to do now, in terms of the time we have left, some very powerful sharing has been done. We have 31 people in this group, plus the 4 panelists. I would like to, at this point, open the floor to anybody here to address any of the panelists or all 3 of them, or ask a question or say something that is coming to them now about this very, very powerful place where we are. And I might not see all the hands, so if I'm ignoring you, just speak up.
Hi, Annette. It's Rory.
Hello. Hello, Rory.
Hi. When I was training as a clinical psychologist in the late 1990s, we were associated with a clinic in Mamelodi known as the Agape Healing Community. It was run by 2 of our lecturers, Stan Lifshitz and Corinne Oosthuizen. And we found that a bunch of whiteys, we only had 1 black person, but that we often had absolutely no handle on when clients or families presented with witchcraft issues. So there's always some story, well, not always, but there were often stories of witchcraft and bewitchment and that. And through Stan and Corinne, we'd formed a relationship with a local Sangoma. Her name was Hilda. And we would often, when we were stuck with this, we would often go and consult with Hilda about the family or about, and get insight and get input into how we can best serve the family or the client under those conditions. And it's always stayed with me that I think as clinical psychologists trained in a Western framework of healing, and sometimes it's actually not even healing as much as reduction of difficult symptoms. I'm sorry to say that. But yeah, for us to stay in touch with practitioners of other traditions is for me quite an important aspect of the work we must do as healers jointly. So I just wanted to say that to the three. Thank you very much for your sharing. I really appreciated it.
Yes, thank you. I also want to thank the three Sangomas, traditional healers who spoke from their experience. And what really stood out for me is the whole idea of decolonization. And that for me, that makes me a little bit anxious, not decolonization itself, but how the job can be done through this upcoming conference or some of the work. So that's my one thought. My second thought is what really, I think the word is excites me, is the opportunity to think about how ancestral meaning systems and the unconscious speak to each other. And I think that is a very important part of our work, because in the previous conference, one of the things that we've seen is that ancestral meaning systems have so many definitions for so many people. So it's actually an opportunity to bring all the voices into the conference, and to perhaps part of what we will begin to understand is what kind of denigration has happened, and what projections have we put on ancestral meaning systems, and what projections must we take back and manage these projections and transform these projections so that we can access our ancestral meaning systems more readily within our organizations. And maybe hear more of people's experiences as healers, seers, knowers in our organizations. Thank you, Inid.
Thank you for that. And Precious put up a hand. Thank you, Michelle. Precious, do you want to ask your question or say?
Yes, hi everybody. Yes, I have a question. I want to know from the Sangomas that if, for instance, you know that you have a gift, you know that, like, for instance, for me, my journey started in church. So I'll be this prophetic intercessor, I'll be praying, and then in the moment of praying, then I would see. And then I'll maybe praying for somebody and stuff like that. But with time, with the awakening and everything else that has been happening, now I want to find out, for you to become a healer, because I've heard this for so many times, that you're a healer, you use water and whatever people get healed and oils and stuff. Do you need to go through the whole initiation situation, or how do you then go about it? For instance, for so long in the church, I would have this experience of Holy Spirit that I would hear even when I just sit, and I would just be hearing and listening, until somebody told me that it's usually, they call it abantu abadala or your ancestors and that type of thing. So now I want to know, how do you then go about maybe finding the person to train you, or do you just sit and wait for that thing to happen? Because a couple of days ago, I was just in prayer and meditation, and then I started to make these funny sounds, that sangomas they make, and I could pick up that it's different sounds and it's different beings, sort of like masculine and feminine energies going on. But I got terrified because I was just alone in my room, in a state of prayer, and I'm like, yo, imagine if I lose my mind in this situation. So like, yeah. So I want to know, how do you then walk through the journey? How do you find somebody? Like, I'm excited that John is in the Eastern Cape, because I'm in the Eastern Cape, so I could just find John. So what is the thing? Someone like me, I don't have a teacher, I don't have anything, but all my life for the last 10 years, I would hear, I would see, and then how do you navigate that as you journey through your spiritual journey and stuff like that? So that's my question.
So do you want me to answer, or is there
Yes,
someone there who
please.
wants to? Okay.
Anybody, John, you can answer. Yes, anybody. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Because I'm on my iPhone now. Is this all right?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Okay, so this is a really good question. So the first thing I'd say from what I've heard from you is that you have a good connection with your umoya. You know, you have a very good connection with your umoya, and also
Yes.
with your izinyanya, you know, Bantu Badala, with your ancestors.
Yes.
So the first thing what I would recommend if you were my client, I would say get some mpepo. You know, it's very easy to get mpepo, and you burn some mpepo, you go down on your knees, you light a white candle, and then just start to pachla, just start to pray in any way that you've prayed before, where you have that experience of the Holy Spirit, or you could say umoya or abantu abadala, ne? So you just pray like that, and then ask your ancestors, ask the Holy Spirit or your umoya to be directed to a teacher that can help you connect with your calling and connect with your healing gifts. And it's important to ask your spirits, your ancestors first before you go asking people, because you should be guided with your intuition. You should be guided with your dreams in terms of where to find your teacher, because that's the old way. This is what happened to me. And nowadays people get so confused because of the internet and because of social media. But you know, this old way of connecting is still with us, and it's stronger than ever before. And we have to trust. You have to do the pachla, you have to do your prayers, and we say tandaza, pray with everything you've got. And tandaza madlozi, tandaza, you must pray, and then you must also trust, temba. You must trust in God. You must trust in the Holy Spirit, with that voice that comes to you. You must trust that you're going to be guided, and don't be misinformed, because with social media, things are shown to happen quickly. Sometimes with this path of Isangoma, we have to pray, and then we have to be patient. We have to pray again. Sometimes it can take a few weeks for us to get guidance from our ancestors in our dreams. And you must keep doing it, keep doing the prayers, and then keep listening. You must listen to the dreams, listen to the messages you get, and write them down in a book. Get a diary, write it down and date it. And then over a few weeks or a few months, you will get direction. I mean, this is what's happened to me. So if as a simple umlungu from Johannesburg, if I got guidance and I was shown a map of South Africa and where to meet a teacher in Port St. John's, if this happened to me, then it can happen to other people as well. You just have to trust, and then listen deeply, really listen deeply, without expectations. Listen to your dreams and listen to those messages that come to you, because it sounds like what I can hear, what you've said now, that you are getting strong messages. So the next is to pray, to trust, and believe, and be patient.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I see that Leslie, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Annette. I just want to say this has been a very powerful set of exchanges. And on the last question about finding our calling, group relations as a modality, I think offers us an opportunity to really encounter what it means to be embodied. So much of the world takes for granted these definitions, you're black, you're white, you're male, you're female, you're gay, you're straight, all of these labels that we attach to ourselves from culture and from what we see in the mirror are open to question. And in a group relations conference, you discover yourself and all of the ancestors, all of the things that make you up in a really profound way. So I'm really inspired to be part of this journey and to be thinking, what does it mean actually for us to be human as embodied spiritual beings living a human existence? And I think this threshold that we're on is opening a new way of encountering. So just wanted to say that. Thank you to the speakers. You're muted, Annette.
Second time, I wonder what that means. I'm going to hand over to Michelle. If Lesile, you wanted to ask a quick question, if that can be permitted. This is so fascinating. I think we need to do it again. So one more question from Kanasile. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. And then if Michelle can just come up and do the closure. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Kanyasile. This is a very fascinating discussion, and thank you for the opportunity to join and hear the richness that comes with the information here. So I'm faced with a situation where there's mental health illness in my household, and medicine, talk therapy doesn't seem to be working based on feedback I'm getting from my daughter. And I think as a recently awakened person, I've been considering alternative treatment, but didn't quite know which one would be appropriate. And I'm fascinated by what Lerato shared, particularly with the colonization and the denial, particularly when one grew up in the church. And I'm also just wondering, if I were to then seek additional treatment to deal with the current diagnosis, and I wanted to see umngoma, how do I know where to go? Do I take people's references, and how would one go about dealing with that particular situation? Thank you very much.
This is really getting so full and fascinating. I am aware of the fact that we are on the time boundary, and I'm handing over to Michelle so she can manage that part and tell me what to do, because I see hands.
Oh, I know, Inette, I'm not going to get involved in that. Maybe we can ask the colleagues if we can have another 5 minutes so that Kyla can ask her question and I can say something about the conference, please.
Fabulous. Thank you, Michelle. Kyla, please go ahead.
Hi there. I'll be quick. My question is to the clinical psychologist, I guess, stepping into the world of spirit and sangomas. Do you see mental health in a different way to how, I guess, it's being framed in the psychology field? That's my question.
Yes, Kyla, absolutely. You know, I think the field of psychology has gotten in trouble in terms of failing to make a distinction between psychiatric diagnosis and spiritual emergence. So that in the past, people who had spiritual emergent experiences would be misdiagnosed. But definitely being on this journey and understanding indigenous knowledges, it helps me quite a lot. It does.
Fantastic. Do you think that there's space for that kind of Indigenous knowledge to leak into the psychology, the field?
Absolutely, particularly when we work with dreams. You know, when you start asking people about their dreams, you get to identify that some of these dreams are purely ancestral, and it gets you to question your diagnosis and your conclusions.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe I will then also thank you. I really want to thank everybody for the questions, the comments, as well as the panelists for your contributions. I'm sure Inette will say something more, but I want to say something about what I notice about the members of this dialogue, that we have an international contingency here. And I think that that is very exciting, because there are so many ancestral meaning systems and indigenous knowledge systems that can enrich the upcoming conference, and can then bring more voices about ancestral meaning systems and make it more robust than the the danger of a single story, or the single story would be the South African story, which is of course a very important story, but joined by the international stories as well in terms of indigenous knowledge systems and ancestral meaning systems. I think that is very important. So this dialogue as part of the upcoming preparation for the upcoming group relations conference, which is about to explore ancestral meaning systems as the impact, leadership and authority. And I want to introduce you to the directorate of this conference, and I would ask Dr. Leslie Brissett and Ms. Ramasodi, I hope, if please to put on your camera so that we can introduce you to the participants here, if you don't mind. Sekhoma? Sekhoma will be our administrator for the conference, and Leslie is the associate director for the conference. Ah, there she is. Hello, Sekhoma. Good to see you here. And we will make up the directorate of the conference. We will be joined by consultancy staff who will then we will then be responsible for creating the conference in terms of the conference as a container in which we will then work to the primary task. We will also send you a link to the information of the conference, but also a link to a survey. And one of the things that we do in the survey is to ask you whether you would like to have a conversation with us about group relations conferences, as well as ancestral meaning systems and how they relate to leadership and authority. I'm just thinking if it's in order with my colleagues, if they maybe want to say something, that is Leslie and Sekhoma, or am I putting you on the spot? Should I just hand over to Inette?
I think in interest of time, just to say this is the second version, externalization idea, and it is so significant that this is coming out of South Africa, coming out of UNISA. And we know, we talk about the cradle of civilization. So if we're going to recapture the idea of the soul as Freud intended, what better place for it to start than in South Africa? So I think it's a real privilege to be part of it. Thank you.
Sekhoma, you want to say something? Add something?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm looking forward to being an administrator. Previously, I did join the conference as a participant, and I always find it very fascinating. Yeah, it will be my second time for getting into the conference, so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Sekhoma, and thank you, Leslie. There's also perhaps a possibility of another person that can join the director and the directorate, and he is amongst us, but we are still negotiating that. But one of the things that I want to say, I will also say that this conference is housed within SAIHOPSA. This is the Society for IOP in South Africa, and within the Tavistock Institute, London. So I also want to thank the executive members of SAIHOPSA who has joined this dialogue. So I hand over to you, Inette.
And on this note, maybe even a reluctant time boundary note, a big, big thank you, John, to you, Nhlanhla and Lerato for taking us into a space where you have been and sharing with in such depth. And for all of you who came, thank you so much. Please consider coming to our very exciting conference. More information will be sent to you because we do have your emails. And I think there's a lot to now reflect on. And Michelle, thank you for introducing us to the directorate. I'm now more excited than ever. So I'm going to reflect a lot and my body is still quivering. Thank you and good night, good afternoon, good morning, whoever's looking at this. It was lovely being here.